Okay, so it is over. 8 episodes, 4 years of waiting, endless production drama, 2 cast deaths, 1 very confused fanbase, and 1 ending that has the internet completely divided right down the middle. Euphoria Season 3 is done, the show is done, and I have a lot of thoughts. Welcome back to the channel. If you are a returning viewer, you already know I do not hold back. If you are new here, strap in because today we are going digging not just into what happened in the finale but into what it means, what went wrong, what actually worked, and why this show managed to break its own legacy in the most spectacular way possible. Let us start at the beginning, or rather the very long gap before the beginning. Euphoria Season 2 wrapped in 2022. Season 3 did not premiere until April 12, 2026. That is 4 years. For context, 4 years ago I was watching Season 2 in real time and thinking this show was going to go down as one of the greatest dramas of its generation. What happened in that gap? A lot. The 2023 writers and actors strikes delayed everything across Hollywood. There were reports of creative tension between Sam Levinson and Zendaya. And then Angus Cloud, who played Fezco, died in July 2023 from an accidental overdose at just 25 years old. Executive producer Kevin Turen also passed away that same year from a cardiac emergency. Then Eric Dane, who played Cal Jacobs, died in February 2026 from complications related to ALS. This show carried real grief into its final season, real, gut-wrenching, personal grief, and you can feel it in the DNA of certain scenes. The problem is, grief does not automatically translate into good writing. And that tension between emotional authenticity and narrative coherence is exactly what makes Season 3 such a complicated watch. Critics were not kind. Season 3 currently sits at a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. Season 1 landed at 82%. Season 2, despite being polarizing, held at around 83%. This is a dramatic freefall. The consensus complaint was straightforward. The show abandoned what made it special and turned into something completely unrecognizable. Alright, let us talk about what went down in Episode 8, titled In God We Trust. The cartel storyline that dominated Season 3 reaches its end here. Alamo, the crime boss played by Ed Whale, essentially wins the war against Lori by discovering that Rue was working with the DEA. Lori, cornered and facing federal agents, ends her own life rather than go to prison. Her associates Wayne and Faye, who have been bumbling through the season like a mismatched comedy duo dropped into a crime thriller, managed to escape and hitchhike their way out of the plot entirely. The big clever twist involves a switched ambulance. The DEA shows up expecting to find a fentanyl shipment and finds nothing. Big Eddie and Bishop, 2 of the show's more functional side characters, had swapped the vehicles. The DEA's big bust is a bust, a dead rat in an empty ambulance, which is honestly a decent bit of plotting. Then comes Rue. Rue has survived a genuinely absurd action sequence in the cold open. One of Lori's henchmen literally lassos her and drags her in the dirt. Think about that. Zendaya being dragged through the dirt in what was marketed as a teen drama about drug addiction and high school. That image alone tells you everything you need to know about where this season went. She is rescued, she thinks she is safe, and Alamo rewards her with drugs. And here is where the writing does something that actually makes sense for the character. Rue, being an addict who also genuinely wants to do the right thing, accepts both the drugs and the praise without questioning them. She trusts Alamo, that trust kills her. The painkillers Alamo gives her are laced with fentanyl. And while she is alone on Ali's couch drifting into a dream sequence, she is actually dying. This is the part of the episode that genuinely affected people, myself included, even through all the frustration with the season. As Rue loses consciousness, she enters a dream. She sees a news report claiming Fezco has escaped prison, and she decides she has to go find him. Now here is the thing that makes this hit differently than it otherwise would. The footage used of Fezco and Rue together in a field, standing side by side and looking out at the horizon, that was real footage. Sam Levinson found an unreleased clip of Zendaya and Angus Cloud that had been filmed years ago and never used in the show. He used it here in this moment as Rue dies. Levinson told Esquire that he based the prison escape storyline on a real-life prison break from 2023, where someone climbed out of a facility in Pennsylvania and ran into the woods. But the reason for bringing Fez back in this way was deeply personal. He said, and I am paraphrasing here, that he wanted to tell this story for Angus and for people who were not granted a second chance. When you know that context, the dream sequence lands completely differently. This is not just Rue's fantasy. It is the show's goodbye to a real person who died from the same thing that kills Rue. That is genuinely moving. That is the show at its most honest. Rue's dying mind cycles through what mattered to her: family, Jules on a bike, Fez in that field. And then she runs, not away from something this time, but toward her childhood home, toward her mother Leslie reading the Bible. She reaches out. And then she is gone, alone on Ali's couch, reaching into nothing. Zendaya's performance here is the kind of thing that justifies every Emmy she has won and every one she is likely to win in the future. She does not need dialogue in these final minutes. She does not need anything except her face and whatever she found in herself to play this scene. Here is where my praise ends and my criticism begins again. Ali, played by Calman Domingo, discovers Rue's body. He figures out she was poisoned. He goes to a meeting, confesses to a relapse, has a crisis of faith. All of that tracks, that is earned drama. Then he puts on his U.S. Marine Corps uniform, drives to a strip club, shoots Alamo dead. I want to be clear about something. Calman Domingo is one of the finest actors working today. He won a Tony, he has been Emmy-nominated multiple times, and he brings genuine gravitas to everything he touches. The problem is not him. The problem is that Ali committing a revenge murder is fundamentally inconsistent with who this character was built to be across 3 seasons. The show tries to justify it through symbolism. The uniform signals he sees this as lawful justice. Bishop removes the bullets from Alamo's gun beforehand, so Alamo cheats and Ali still wins. Karmic justice, fine in theory. But Ali was Rue's sponsor. His entire function in this story was to represent the possibility of recovery, of principled survival. Turning him into a gunslinger in the final hour undercuts that completely. If this had been a fantasy sequence inside Rue's dying mind, I would have loved it. Give Levinson his Western moment without breaking the character. Instead, it appears to be presented as literal fact, and that is a choice I cannot defend. Let us run through where everyone else ends up because some of these are genuinely interesting and some are just frustrating. Cassie ends up running an OnlyFans content house out of her and Nate's old home, alongside Maddy. She's making money, she is functional, but she is trapped in a hollow version of the life she wanted. The final shot of her crying next to a ring light in an empty room is striking. It is a doll in a doll's house image that works visually, even if it is a fairly cliched endpoint for a character who deserved more nuance. Maddy comes out arguably the best of anyone. She paid her debts to Alamo both financially and otherwise, and once he is dead, she is free. She survives, she keeps her head, and the show even leans into the idea that she was the most competent person in the room all season. Which, honestly, tracks. Nate had already died in episode 7, killed by a rattlesnake after being buried alive. Jacob Elordi went out in what can only be described as a horror movie sequence. Make of that what you will. Jules gets maybe the most disrespectful treatment of any major character. She has no dialogue in the finale. None. She is shown in a single scene, visibly unwell, painting in her sugar daddy's apartment. The painting shows Rue engulfed in fire. Hunter Schafer, who is a legitimately talented performer, is given nothing to work with. This person was important enough to receive her own standalone special episode in 2020. In the final episode of the entire series, she does not speak a single word. Lexi at least gets a conversation. She turns down Cassie's job offer, which is entirely right for her character. She is the one person in the show who has a genuine shot at a functional life, and the finale wisely does not ruin that, even while acknowledging her complicated feelings about Rue's death. Sam Levinson said in a post-finale interview that Rue's death was, in his words, the honest ending because people like Rue do not make it. He said he wanted to tell a true story about addiction and grief. Here is my take: he is not wrong about addiction. Statistically, outcomes like Rue's are real. Fentanyl in particular has become a catastrophic public health crisis. The choice to have fentanyl as the literal murder weapon woven through the entire season, from Rue body packing it as a mule in episode 1 to dying from it in the finale, is a complete narrative circle. That part is thoughtful writing. But here is the tension that season 3 never resolved. You cannot claim you're telling an honest story about addiction while simultaneously staging your characters in a Western drug cartel war that has nothing to do with addiction. Those two things are in conflict. The honest addiction story and the gratuitous crime thriller are fighting each other the whole season, and neither wins. Euphoria season 1 and 2 were not realistic. They were stylized, maximalist, sometimes almost surreal, but they were emotionally grounded in the actual experience of being young and in pain. That grounding is what made them connect with people. Season 3 lost that grounding and replaced it with plot mechanics. Levinson also said on the New York Times podcast that this is the end of the story he set out to tell. HBO confirmed it officially: Euphoria is over. So what does Euphoria leave behind? Honestly, a complicated and genuinely meaningful body of work with a deeply frustrating ending. Season 2 of this show averaged over 16 million viewers per episode. That made it the highest performing HBO drama outside of Game of Thrones in 18 years. The cultural impact was real. The fashion, the cinematography, the music choices, the way it talked about mental health and identity and addiction, all of it filtered into broader culture in ways that are still visible. And then there is the talent. Zendaya is now one of the most celebrated actors of her generation, and a significant part of that is because of this show. Jacob Elordi is a genuine movie star. Sydney Sweeney has built a career that extends far beyond any single project. Hunter Schafer, Alexa Demi, Maud Apatow, all of them grew up in front of us through this show and demonstrated real, awards-worthy ability. The tribute to Angus Cloud, using real footage of him and Zendaya that had never been seen before, is the moment that will outlast the discourse about the cartel plot or the Western aesthetic. That moment was true. That moment was about something real. And Zendaya's on-set farewell speech, which HBO shared publicly, where she told the crew that many of them had watched her grow up, that it had been a pleasure and an honor, that was not scripted. That was a person who genuinely loves the work and the people she made it with. The finale episode is called In God We Trust. Rue's final voiceover says, "May God bless us all." In death, she finds the peace she could never quite reach while alive. That is the version of this show I want to remember, not the lasso scene, not the ambulance swap. The field, Rue and Fez side by side in footage that was never supposed to be seen. That is the goodbye the show deserved. That is everything I have got on the Euphoria Season 3 finale. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Were you satisfied with how it ended? Did Rue's death land for you, or did it feel like a betrayal? And honestly, where does this rank against the other 2 seasons for you? If you made it this far, thank you. Subscribe if you are not already, and I will see you in the next one.